Hey gang, this is Bill Storm. Welcome to the I Can podcast. Today, I am proud to have Sifu David Chang with me, and we're going to be talking about the top 5 reasons why martial arts is a must for back to school. So welcome, sir.
It is such an honor to be here with you on the show. Thank you so much for inviting me today.
My pleasure. So before we get going, can you let the listeners know where your locations are?
Yeah, so I own Wushu Central Martial Arts Academy, and we have 2 locations in San Jose, California, and Palo Alto, California.
Okay, super. So at the end, just for those of you who are listening, at the end, if you decide that, or if you've been thinking about martial arts as something that might be great for your child or perhaps yourself or even your family, Sifu is going to share with us how to be able to find him directly. I'll include some clickable links down in the description. So Sifu, tell me a little bit about how you got involved in the martial arts and why you really made this your lifelong passion and career.
For sure, yeah. We'll start at the beginning. I have always been exposed to martial arts ever since I was very young. I grew up in a Chinese family, and we were always watching kung fu television and serial dramas and movies. And so it's always been a part of my life and a part of my culture, but I didn't really get involved into it until I started. My first martial arts style was Taekwondo, and I got into it roughly when I was starting high school. And I wanted to learn self-defense. You know, it was something that just kind of interested me. And the only real martial arts style that was accessible in the area that I was growing up in San Jose was Taekwondo. There was Taekwondo schools everywhere. And there was no Chinese martial arts style school available. So that's what I went with. And I loved it. I trained in Taekwondo for about 4 years until I went to college, and then I attended UC Berkeley, and UC Berkeley has a wonderful martial arts program, really fantastically set up there with all different martial arts styles. And the one martial arts style that immediately drew my attention was Wushu, because being of Chinese heritage, growing up watching Chinese martial arts movies and serial dramas, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't believe I finally have the opportunity to learn the Chinese martial arts style. So I dove right into it. And I remember my first day stepping into the Wushu class, and I thought I was pretty badass. I mean, I've been doing martial arts for 4 years already. You know, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go in there, and they're all gonna be really surprised at how good I am. And that class kicked my butt so bad. I remember walking back to my dorm, and just my legs were so wobbly. I was so exhausted and so fatigued. And I even tried jogging back to my dorm, and literally my legs just collapsed. Like I experienced muscle failure. I just crumbled on the ground. I was just laughing like how pathetic I was, you know. And I loved it. I just loved the fact that it challenged me so much. And so that's where I got into Wushu, and I got very serious about it. Went into the competitive track. Won the United States Nationals after a few years, and then at a certain point decided that, you know, it's time for me just to kind of pass this on. And, you know, a couple of things that really drove me into this is, number one, is the passion for martial arts. I just love it. And it really drew to me. It was so appealing, the idea of being able to do something that I truly love for the rest of my life and to make a living out of it. So that was one of the most important things. The second thing was I saw how much martial arts really helped people, and not just for physical self-defense. I've never had to get into a fisticuffs with anybody. You know, I broke up a couple of fights, de-escalated a few situations, you know, protected a couple of people. But I mean, that's, you know, but I've never actually had to throw and actually hit or kick someone in any sort of aggressive manner. However, I saw for myself and for the people surrounding me how it really changed their character, how it helped me develop much more confidence, gave me greater focus and clarity, much more discipline, and just made me an overall better person, and helped dozens and dozens of other people that I was associated with do the exact same thing. And so I really wanted to make it my lifelong passion to uplift other people and to really teach them how to find that same level of growth and eventually help them become successful in that way.
That's really interesting that you got your start that way. you and I have that in common. I got started, early on, but a lot of kids today, or at least back then, there weren't a lot of younger children back then. That just didn't exist. So when you talk about things like, Kung Fu theater and some of them, the television shows that were on back then, you know, going back as far as even when there was just black and white television, those were great shows, but there weren't a lot of younger kids. So it wouldn't have been, out of the ordinary for somebody to get started when they were in their teenage years and high school, so on and so forth. And one of the things that was interesting about when I started was that not only was there the physical component, obviously, of the martial arts, but there was this element of character building, specifically with the Zig Ziglar I Can program. This was like a cornerstone of the martial arts school that I grew up in, and it was just this really unique synergy and blend of physical with the mental that created champions. And that sounds like that's kind of what happened to you. It had that kind of impact on you.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's what really separates the martial arts from everything else, right? You can do gymnastics, you can do dance, you can do soccer, you can do baseball. But what's really special about the martial arts is how it really draws the physical and the mental and pulls it together. And just really, the focus is on not just the sport, but it's the development of the human, person.
100%. Yeah, I love that because when you're thinking about personal development, the way that, like pressure creates diamonds, and the way that you develop someone's character is by having pressure, having to be disciplined and having those stressors there. And it has to be difficult. It has to be hard in order for it to sink in and set and become, the kind of person that you need to become.
Right.
So that's amazing. That's very cool.
Totally.
So let's talk a little specific. Let's talk specifically about the topic that we came here to talk about today, and that is introducing kids to the martial arts and why it really is so different than any other kind of activity, and specifically the reasons why martial arts is a must these days for kids going back to school. You gave me a list of 5, and I wanted to break down each one of them and let people hear your thoughts on these. Number 1 was self-defense. Number 2 was bullying, which could be physical, it could be mental, it could be verbal. Number 3 was confidence. The growth mindset, I'm interested in hearing what you have to say about that. Number 4, and then the last one I think is one of the drivers behind anybody's success, and that's grit. So let's jump on in and let's touch on self-defense. Let's talk a little bit about why that's so important right now.
Yeah, 100%. It's really funny because I had a conversation with a gentleman. He was talking about, we were talking about the martial arts. He was talking about, he feels great because he knows how to fight. And it's really funny because immediately in that conversation, I wanted to steer this in the direction of him understanding that the real benefit of the martial arts, of course, there's the physical aspect, and there's the ability to be able to use your martial arts in a physical way, right? And that's really important, but it's not necessarily about the aggressive part right? Having the ability to defend yourself is fantastic because, number one, if something ever does happen, you're in a position where you can keep yourself and keep your family safe, right? And I think that's just a must do for everybody. But number 2, when you have that ability, it allows you to be a lot more assertive, a lot more bold in situations than you would normally, than you would be if you didn't have that, right? So a classic situation, and this is going to tie into a little bit of that bullying as well too, but in a classic situation, if you, let's say a kid in school, has a friend and some guy, grabs the kid's lunch, or starts shoving his friend around. If you, as a child, if you're afraid of getting beat up, you're not going to be able to or willing to stand up for your friend who just got his lunch snatched, right? Or is getting shoved around. Having that ability to defend yourself allows you to stand up for what you believe in. And I think that's why that is so important. And again, physical ability to defend yourself is important, but the greater aspect of that is that it gives you the ability to be a better person and to stand up for what's right.
What's interesting about this that I've found over the years also is that kids that take martial arts, because they have the physical skills, because they're physically stronger, because they're capable, they carry themselves differently. And
Sure.
all of a sudden, they don't have those issues.
Right.
Yeah, they just don't. So, the first mindset is, wow, if I had to, I could, defend myself. And then eventually they come to the conclusion that I really don't need to, because nobody wants to try.
Yeah, and I believe statistically, children who grow up and are involved in martial arts get fewer physical confrontations than those who don't, right? And a huge part of it comes from the fact that if they know how to defend themselves, they don't have to get into a confrontation. They don't feel the need to boost their ego and get into an aggressive confrontation. And also just because of the way they carry themselves, people see that, they sense it, and they back away. So, there's one incident that happened to me a few years ago. My wife and I were walking at the mall. We were on the outside, and we saw about 40 feet, 50 feet down the sidewalk, a woman was being assaulted. She was being attacked, and there was a really tall gentleman, probably a good 6'3", 6'4", and he was kicking her, and she was on the ground. And I yelled, and I ran up, and I got myself in between, the two of them, and I told him to back off, and I could tell he was looking at me and trying to size me up. Yeah, exactly. And when he realized that I would fight back, if he continued to push forward, he left, right? And so it was simply just the fact that he doesn't, this is it's so cowardly, right? And it drives me nuts, because here's someone who is literally double the weight of this poor woman. Yeah. And that's what gives him the guts to assault this person. And the moment somebody comes up and is willing to stand up against him, he's like, okay, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? Right. And so, for me, it was a huge learning incident as well too, just because it helped me understand the psychology of people who will hurt people, will hurt others. And it was absolutely nuts. But, I think that just really kind of drives home that idea that being capable of defending yourself really reduces the incidences of violence in the world.
Yeah, agree. So the second one relates to that as far as bullying, but there's so much more to bullying. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that we have right now with bullying in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when people think of bullying, the first thing people think about is some kid getting slammed up against a locker, getting wedgied, just getting picked on physically by a bully. And of course, self-defense, learning martial arts helps you with that. But what's even better, and actually what's more important, because it's so much more prevalent, is the verbal bullying that can go on, and the social bullying. And then there's cyberbullying, right? So there's all these different aspects of bullying that happen a lot more than the physical. The physical is what you immediately think about because that's what you see. Yes. But the more long-lasting, damaging, and more prevalent types of bullying, and all the different other types, where a bully is calling you names, making fun of you, and just really kind of tearing you down. And that is dangerous, because that doesn't just happen once. Like a physical bullying incident happens once, and then that can sometimes be the end of it, or it might happen sporadically. But the verbal bullying happens day after day after day after day. And I think one of the things that we come to realize is, when we grow up, we're always taught, sticks and stones, may break my bones, words will never hurt me. I'm rubber, you're glue. You know what I mean? You get these kind of these things, and it gives the impression that you can just ignore what people are saying. But the thing is, the first time you hear it, you might be like, whatever, right? But when you hear it day after day after day after day, I mean, for a child, even for an adult, but for a child especially, after a certain time, they start to believe it. And so it's so important to be able to address that. And one of the things that I think schools don't do a very good job of is teaching children what to do when that happens. And again, they'll talk about physical bullying, go tell a teacher, but like what happens when you've got somebody who is always just tearing you down verbally, right? And so I think what a good martial arts program will do for children will teach them to not accept that and to recognize what that is. I think a lot of times kids get bullied verbally, they don't realize that it's bullying. They don't understand that this is what's actually happening. So important for them to be educated in that. And so that when that does happen, when that verbal bullying happens, that they're able to recognize that, okay, I see what's going on, right? And then they're able to address that. The same thing with social bullying. Sometimes it's not over. Sometimes it's not what somebody says. It's how someone acts, towards you, or it's the way they look at you, or it's the way they whisper to their friends, hey, oh, Bill's really stupid. Don't talk to him. Stuff like that, right? That happens all the time. And then there's cyberbullying, where people are just doing it anonymously behind their usernames on social media, and they're using that as their method, so that because there's no fear of reprisal.
What's interesting is when we were kids, if there was bullying, especially if it happened in school, well, once you left school and you went home, that was the end of it. There weren't all of these communication methods. Now these kids are attached at the hip to everything, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever these ones that these kids go on these days. So they can be targeted from distances. I mean, from people that don't even live in the same community. I mean, they could live across the world and they can get picked on. And if the kids don't understand how to have a better self-image and how not to choose to be in those places, that's part of self-defense. Is don't be in those places, because you set yourself up for being a target of those kind of things. And I really do think that martial arts programs like yours give those kids a positive place to be, where they look forward to going and being supported and have friends and influences that are putting good input in, instead of having nothing to do and spending too much time in places where they shouldn't.
100%. Children, they get into a crowd, right? It's so important that they have a positive crowd to be part of. So I think for a lot of children, they'll go to school, and that group that they hang out with is their world. It is their whole social circle. Mm-hmm. And so feeling accepted and liked by that group becomes so important for them, because if it's not them, it's nobody else, right? Who else are they gonna feel a part of? But being involved in a martial arts program that's positive, that teaches great values, and is surrounded by individuals who are success driven, and with an instructor who supports that, that's huge, because it creates that second environment or family where a student can be like, this is where I'm driving my strength from, and I don't necessarily need to go with whatever's happening with this group of kids at school and needing to feel accepted by them.
Agree. So the third one, as why martial arts is a must for back to school, you said, was confidence. And I'd like to talk a little bit about specifically, how does martial arts build confidence in kids versus other choices or activities that a parent may choose for or consider for their child. What is it about martial arts that really develops confidence?
Yeah, so at Wushu Central, we talk about 3 success factors, right? In other words, the major factors that will lead someone to be a success in their future. And when we really thought about this, I was looking at some of the most successful people in the world. I mean, the most amazing, the people who are changing the world. People like Elon Musk, or Richard Branson or Steve Jobs, and people who are doing amazing things and making a huge impact and just really changing the course of history with what they do. And what made them successful? What were the character traits that really separated them from everybody else? And it really came down to 3 that were absolutely necessary, that were consistent across every single successful entrepreneur, and that was confidence, growth mindset, and grit. Confidence is so huge because, and we'll talk with, let's say, from starting, running a business perspective. When you want to start a business, when you're an entrepreneur, there are going to be times where almost nobody believes in you.
100%.
And the only person you can truly turn to is going to be yourself. You have to believe in your vision more than anybody else will. When everybody else when you're encountering all the naysayers, you've got to be the one to be able to say, I believe in this vision and I believe that I'm capable of doing it. It's part of our student creed. In our student creed, we say, I have confidence because I believe my future is amazing. And it's just that deep-seated belief that we want our students to have, that no matter what happens, put it in your mind that this is your story and this story has an awesome ending. And you're in that story. And just to always have that deep-seated belief that things are going to turn out great for you. And I think that's huge. I think every single entrepreneur went into this with this vision and this conviction and this belief that they were going to make it. I don't think anybody went through and be like, well, I'm going to create the world's first mass market electric car. It might work. I don't know. Right. I mean, I think Elon Musk went into it. No, I'm going to make this. This is going to happen. Yes. Right. And I'm not taking no for an answer. So that's so important for a person to have, so that they can become successful, because they've got to have that deep set of conviction and be able to drive forward when everybody else says, no, I don't think it's going to happen. Right.
So as an instructor with your students, you're literally speaking that into them. Like you're planting those seeds in their head that says, you're endowed with the seeds of greatness. I mean, you can do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a couple of different methods. Number one, of course, is having that part of student creed. Number two is storytelling. I think storytelling is huge. It is taking my experience that built that confidence and then transferring it into another person. Right. Yeah. And it's way different from lecturing. And it's one of the things there, I used to make this mistake as a parent, and I would tell my kids, you need to be more confident. Or you need to be more confident, and just telling them to be confident doesn't make them confident, right? It's almost like telling somebody you need to have more muscles. Well, you're not going to just grow muscles because you told someone to. They have to build that muscle, right? Yeah. So same thing happens with confidence, is that has to be trained. And I think confidence grows with, number one, having someone who believes in you, who supports you. So having an instructor and or a parent who is rallying behind you and helping you give you that confidence. But number two, it's experiencing that for yourself. So one of the ways you build confidence is through skill building, right? It's through mastery of what you're doing. So if you take a student who's absolutely white belt, and white belts are not good at martial arts, that's why they're there. They're a beginner, and they work on their techniques, and they learn their forms, and they learn their self-defense moves. And after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of practice, they are good at it. That teaches the student that if I work at something, I can be awesome at it. Yes. Right. And it's so problematic when parents get their kids into something and then pull them out, and get them into something else and then pull them out. And they never stick with something long enough to become great at it. Yeah. It takes years to master something. But until a person masters something for at least the very first time, they will never be fully confident, because they haven't gotten good at anything. The moment they become good at something, whether it be the martial arts, whether it be painting, whether it be anything else, they're gonna have that, and they're gonna realize that whatever I need to do, I can do it.
What's interesting about that? Two things that you said kind of struck me. One of the things is you have to speak that belief into them, but that requires training on behalf of the teacher. So sometimes you may get a very well-meaning coach or something that's in another activity. They haven't been trained in how to tell a story and how to inspire the person. So instead, they're just a drill sergeant yelling at the child, not making them feel better or confident. And then sometimes parents, we don't come with a handbook when we have kids. So sometimes the parent, by allowing them to pull them out of one thing and throwing them from one thing to the next, they're not really helping their child develop that confidence either, because they're not giving them the chance to be successful at something that was difficult when they started.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's cool. I mean, that's just something that I heard in you, that you said that the instructors that you have at your school are trained to be good finders. They're trained to be people of influence that are going to pull out the best in your child to help him or her become, you know, the magnificent person, you know, they could be.
100%.
That's cool.
And this is all part of our leadership and our instructor development. It's only a small portion of it is teaching the martial arts, right? Because by the time they enter this our leadership training program, instructor training experience, they've already learned the martial arts. So for us, it's just like, hey, this is how you break it down. But the huge 90% part of it is, this is how you teach the life skills. This is how you work with a student who's feeling down, lacking confidence, shy, having a hard day. You know, this is how you deal with a child who maybe has some special needs, and that's been really, you know, been a challenge for them for their whole life. You know, and here's your opportunity to really uplift them. That's the bulk of what we're doing, is teaching those skills.
So let's talk about number 4 then, the growth mindset. So the instructor, obviously leadership, you know, rises and falls from the top. So you have a growth mindset. Your instructors, I am sure, have a growth mindset. How are you passing that on to your students, and why is that a big deal?
For sure, yeah, and that's number 2 in our student creed, which is, you know, I have a growth mindset because I believe I can always get better. I believe I can always improve, and that's so important for children to develop and to have that mindset as early as possible. Some people assume that it's obvious, right? Like, oh yeah, of course you can improve. Of course you can get better at something. Honestly, not true, right? I know so many children and adults who have a very fixed mindset where they believe that they are just how they are. If they're not good at something, then they're just plain not good at something, you know? And it just never crosses their mind that if you're not good at something, you can learn and become good at it, you know? But they sit at the same place the entire place, they're the same place their whole life, and they never really elevate themselves. And so the sooner you can instill this in a child, especially before it gets too late. I mean, because the longer they stay in a fixed mindset, the harder it is to shift them over into a growth mindset. The sooner you can do this, the better. So we really like to start this really young with the children, and it comes with everything. Now, martial arts. See, the thing about martial arts is, it is the perfect vehicle to teach growth mindset, as well as confidence and grit that we're going to talk about. But it was tailor-made for this purpose, because everything we do in the martial arts training leads right into this. And growth mindset is huge because you know, a student is learning a form and they're not good at it, but then they become good at it. And intrinsically, that teaches the child that whatever you're not good at, when you work at it, you will master it, right? And so it's that lesson that gets repeated over and over and over again. You're a white belt, you're really bad at this material, you work at it, you learn it, you improve, you master it, you graduate. Now you're a yellow belt, and guess what? You're really bad at the yellow belt material. So now you're going to go through that process again, and you repeat that. And so it continuously drills this process of, I'm not good at something, I study it, and I focus on improving it, and then I achieve and I master it and I graduate. And that repeated process is martial arts is a metaphor for life, right? Everything that we do, this whole process carries over into school, into your relationships, into your work career, into your whole life trajectory. And so when you master the martial arts, you become a master of your life.
Yes. So that kind of leads us into the last one, which I think could very well be one of the most important ones, because a lot of times grit makes up for anything that you may feel that you're lacking. Just somebody who just doesn't stop. They just keep coming. They don't quit. Darren Hardy reminds me, when you said grit, it reminded me of a quote from Darren Hardy, who's a publisher of Success Magazine. And he said, you have to have 2 things to succeed. You have to take daily consistent action, and you have to have the pig-headed persistence to win. And so that reminded me of that about grit. But I'm interested in, how do you talk to parents, or how do you talk to kids about grit? Like, how do you define what does that mean? You know, if you're a kid, what does grit mean?
Yeah. So, you know, grit for a child and we break this down depending on their age, right? But at the very, very youngest age, it just becomes don't give up, right? Because it's a simple enough phrase for a 3-year-old or 4-year-old to be able to understand, you know. But as the students get older, what we really want them to understand is grit is the commitment to something that you're passionate about, right? And you don't let anything deter you from that. And I think this is so important because in any successful individual, and we know this as entrepreneurs, is we get knocked down over and over and over again. We hit stomach, and it's so funny because people think of the life of an entrepreneur as, oh, you have an idea and you launch it, and then you soar really, really high. You just get better and better and better. In reality, it's like you have an idea and it goes up and you come crashing down and you get knocked to the bottom and you come back up again, you get knocked down again. And it's just this huge roller coaster of, you know, of achievements, but also a lot of disappointments as well too. And it's really funny because I think that, you know, we've made so many mistakes in our business in developing Wushu Central Martial Arts Academy. When someone says, oh man, you know, Sifu Chang, your business is so successful, congratulations. Say, well, you're looking at 18 years of mistakes here. You know, we've gone through it all, and there's been absolutely some really difficult times, and you can imagine 2020, of course, being one of them. You know, so it's not easy all the time, and it's that ability to be able to stick with what you are passionate about is so important. And one of the things that I realized is that you can't have grit with a really, really shallow why.
Yes.
The why has to be what backs you up.
Yes.
You know, for example, if I'm running a martial arts school and my whole purpose is I want to make money, right? I just want to make money. And then when something hard happens, if money is my only motivation, then I'm just, you know, that's where people quit. You're like, oh, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, right? Yeah, well, you know, maybe if money is your only motivation, then yeah, it's not worth it. You know, when you do something else, you probably make, you know, more money with, you know, or you can work a lot less hard, right? And so if your why is flawed, that becomes a problem. So for us, our why has always been to change people's lives, to help children become more successful. You know, one of the things that I experienced, you know, as a young adult was seeing somebody that I knew go down the wrong path and, you know, ended up committing suicide.
Yes.
I know another individual who grew up with everything that you could imagine would be wonderful for a young man to grow up with. He was wealthy. He's driving really expensive cars. He's got a huge mansion for a house. You know, he's like the dream that every kid would want. And he ended up driving recklessly and got himself killed, you know? And so I see these people who they go down through this path in life and they waste all that potential, and they don't have to. If they were only given better guidance, yes. If they were only taught the life choices and the skills and the mindset that they needed to become truly successful in life and not waste it all away. And that's what I feel teaching martial arts is truly about, and why we're so passionate about what we do. And because that mission is so deep rooted and I believe so strongly in it, when difficult times come, there's no question that I'm going to push on, right? There's no question that I've got to make sure that I can continue to serve the people and the children and the families who need this in their life, because I'm making a difference in their life. I'm changing their lives, and it's not negotiable. I can't stop just doing this because something hard happens. I have to continue to find a way to make it happen, to help people regardless of anything that happens, you know, any obstacles that come across our path.
And that is a big responsibility as a master instructor of a martial arts school. There's tremendous pressure to walk your talk and to be that person, because not only are the kids looking for your guidance, but a lot of times your parents and or adult students are also looking to see, okay, you know, times are tough right now. This situation how's Sifu Chang going to react to this? What would he say? How is he going to lead us? How is he going to give us the confidence that we need right now and support we need to help us make those right decisions? And I know for me, I revered my master instructor so highly that if he said, Bill, you can do this, or this is difficult, but it will pass and you'll get through it, I believed him. And that's how strongly the relationship becomes between instructor and student, again, which I think is very different than anything else. And I think that's really cool. So I'm so happy that I had a chance to speak with you about these things today. If someone is listening to this right now and they're considering the martial arts, whether it be for their child or whether it be for themselves, right, as an adult, or whether or not they say, hey, you know what, this is kind of cool. This looks like something that the entire family can do, or they can enjoy like a shared experience. What do they need to do to take the first step, stick their toe in the water to see if martial arts at Wushu Central would be a good fit for them?
Absolutely. So we always offer a complimentary, no-cost introductory lesson. This is a chance for you, your family, your child to check it out, try it, make sure that this is going to be the right fit, make sure this is the right culture for you. You know, there are a lot of great martial arts schools. You want to make sure that this is going to be the one that you're going to be happy with, because when you get involved in a martial arts program and it's a good one, you're going to be involved with this for years and years and years. So you want to make sure you find the right one, the one that's going to be a great fit for you. You want the instructor to be someone that you can truly believe in what they believe in, and the culture is going to be great, and the instructors are all going to be really great, fantastic for you. And so just really take the time to pick the right place. And so we always offer that complimentary introductory lesson so that you can have a chance to meet the team, see the space, see the facilities, take a class, and just see how you feel from that whole experience. So ask people to come right to our website. It's wushucentral.com. And right there, you'll be able to request a free introductory lesson. The moment you put your information in here, we'll reach out to you within the next 24 hours, and we'll ask you a few basic questions just to kind of understand what some of your needs are, and we'll set up a time so you can come check us out. We do this both in person and online. So we have a huge online program as well too. So we have students from literally across the United States. So no matter where you are in the United States or even in the world, sometimes we have people who on the other side of the world taking classes as well too. But no matter where you are, you can take an introductory lesson with us and meet the team, and hopefully, we'll look forward to meeting you, and I hope you love it.
Okay, very good. So what I'll do is in the podcast description, I'll go ahead and put a link for wushucentral.com, so it's clickable. So it'll be very easy for you to be able to find that. And then, should they mention that they reached out to you based on hearing the conversation that we just had on our podcast?
Yeah. So we had a freeze just a moment there. If you could just repeat what you were saying, just the last 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'll put a link to Wushu Central in the podcast description, so it'll be easy for everyone to be able to find it. And should they include, when they reach out, should they mention that they heard this by listening to the podcast? Absolutely. And if you do that, what we'll do is we've got a special for everybody who's listening to this podcast. We will set you up. You will start with that introductory lesson. Make sure that this is going to be a great fit for you. If you decide that this is the right place for you, mention this podcast. We will set you up for your entire first month of lessons for just $99, and we'll include the entire uniform for free, right? So that's going to be a huge savings, and it'll just get you started off really, really easily and on just on a wonderful beginning to your journey in the martial arts. Wow, that's a great offer. Well, thank you so much for offering that out to everybody. Again, it was a pleasure to have you on the ICANN podcast today, Sifu Chang. So thank you again very much, and I look forward to talking to you real soon. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here today, and I'm really grateful for you giving me this opportunity to speak about the martial arts and why I'm so passionate about it. We're here to change lives, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Awesome. My pleasure.